well, sort of still the beginning, sort of towards the middle of the second year. And the second year started with all the bell hand. Remember the bell hand? Yeah, that we did. Yeah, you might like to remember that a lot over these next coming weeks. What the bell hand? What did it allow you to do, the bell hand? Do you remember anything about it? Spread attention. Soften. Yeah, spread attention. Usually getting you to a more neutral state. I dare to say, I'll sort of say, where you can be a little bit more in both internal, external. Yeah? Your autonomic nervous system tends to drop or come up. You equalise your tonus a lot with the bell hand. Huh? And you can feel very quickly, I can see even as some of you are doing it, how much you have an image of all of yourself in that movement. So again, that's really nice to return to as we keep going through the series. What are some movements that I know either calm me, make me more comfortable, bring me back to a sense of what did this woman talk about this? She talks about that learning is about having a calm, alert state. No. So we did the bell hand. What else can you remember? What you did after that? That you started, you would have done it with Susan, and then you started to go toward on your hands and knees. Toward your shoulders, yeah, toward a judo roll. Yeah, toward rolling. No, do you remember any of that? So again, I can see simply by looking at you that the bell hand is in you much more. Huh? But this is really good for me to know as the ATM teacher. What is it? What have you remembered? So the bell hand is something that's, very... you don't have to do a lot, really. It evokes something quite strongly. Whereas all of a sudden, judo rolls, you have to understand yourself moving through space. It's a much bigger idea to be doing a big movement through space and to be tracking yourself as you're moving through space and to still have this quality as you're doing it. Mm-hmm. And there are a lot about going into the judo rolls. Again, this is from my perspective about moving through space in different ways, finding all these different shapes you can make through your torso. Many of the things we explored in that whole series of ATM lessons from the ATM book. Really, how do we find more of ourselves becoming available so the centre becomes freer, that the limbs become free, your head becomes free. So we're going, and it was sort of like, well, what do I do as a first off lesson in the middle of this to start to bring some of this back, but maybe in a little bit more novel way, another way that we were doing. So we'll see what I came up with, and we can comment on it later. So have a walk first. And notice as you're walking, what is more clearly in your self-image? What parts of yourself? So where does your attention go without thinking too much about it at first? And remember, our self-image, we're including our internal space, we're including externally how we're moving through the world, the spaces around us. So do you tend to have a bias more toward one than the other when you go into Feldenkrais mode? And then let's just do a really quick scan through. So are your toes in your image? Your ankles in your image? I'll go through the joints more than anything, purely because we're moving through space. Your knees, your hips, your pelvis, and your lower back, your spine, and your ribs, your collarbones, and your shoulder blades, your shoulders, your elbows, your wrists, your fingers, your neck, and your head. So are there some among that that you pay more attention to than others? And then, of course, the relationship of them all moving in space. So it's just such a really quick thing to do that you can do any time when you're doing something. Just simply do a little scan through and go, what are the places that I tend to miss out? And how does it change if I simply include myself, that part of myself in my image? Because something will change. That's the beauty of this work. That as soon as you include another part of yourself, something changes. Everything has to change. Okay, come back to your mat. And such a simple thing that we can leave with people at any time. Lying on your back. Feeling your contact with the ground. Again, just do a simple scan through. And could you also, to your scan, add in your breathing, just where you're breathing at the moment, what parts of you are involved in your breathing. And then lie on your right side. Feel free to have something small under your head if you want it, but not too big because we're going to be rolling a little bit. So you can have your arm underneath your head if you like. And again, feel free as we go on to keep investigating. Would my towel be helpful? Would my support be helpful or not? Would my arm under my head or not under my head be helpful? So they're just variations you're going to be exploring. Feel where you are on your side and feel the configuration that you're making. How bent your legs are, whether you're truly on your side or you feel part of you is rolled a little bit further forward or back. And can you come to a position where you really feel you're on your side? Notice if your knees are bent above your hips or below your hips, where your feet are in relationship to your pelvis, whether they're a long way in front of your pelvis or back in line with your pelvis. And again, feel free to modify any of this as we keep going through the lesson, just to see how the position, and we've already done a lot on this, how our initial position can really influence what parts of us are invited to move or not. So then could you turn your head toward the ceiling? And there's two ways you can do this. One would be to roll your head. So one way would be to simply roll across your head and feel what happens when you do that if you roll your head to turn it to the ceiling. And then the other way is that you could sort of turn it around itself. So wherever it's resting, you simply lift it and turn it, and your head sort of goes back down pretty much in the same place. So just see if you can feel the difference between those two ways of starting the lesson. So which one would be more a turn and which one would be more a roll? So which one would allow you to stay more clearly on your side? So could you choose the one for you that allows you to stay a little bit more clearly on your side? And then could you put your left hand on your forehead? So your face is to the ceiling. Yeah, your face is to the ceiling. So before you put your left hand on your forehead, you've got your face oriented to the ceiling. Then you put your hand on your forehead. And notice how you have it. Do you have your elbow bent to do this? Do you have your elbow straight to do this? Where's your elbow pointing? And then gently begin to roll your head a little. And I said roll now. Roll your head a little to the left and a little to the right. And just feel how that goes through you, what parts of you are involved. And again, noticing, just as we did in walking, what do you include in your image of doing that? This simple movement of rolling your head to the left and the right. So this is the movement that we'll return to every now and then during the lesson. Okay, so now the next, stay in that same position. So your head's still to the ceiling, your left hand is still on your forehead. And you may have to reorganize your legs, just see how you go with this. So now each time you take your elbow further back to the left, so you're rolling your head to the left, could you begin to lift your left knee at the same time? So your left knee comes away from the right knee, that your feet stay together. And you're just doing it easily and gently. And feeling, when is it that my left knee would get ready to lift? Where would my face be pointing? When my left knee gets ready to want to be involved in this. So you're looking for a connection between this rolling of your head and the rolling of your pelvis. And again, just try your feet in different positions. What's the difference if your feet are in line with your pelvis? Or if your feet are further forward? Or if your knees are bent up to the same level as your hips, or they're down lower. So really just find where could I have my legs that this would make more sense, so that I can begin to find a way that from the starting position with my head to the ceiling and my elbow up, my knee could begin to move as soon as my head began to roll to the left. My knee could begin to lift. It would make sense somehow. So remember, you start with your head. Your starting point is your head facing the ceiling. So you're already twisted a little bit. And you're feeling where you want your legs to be, which is obviously going to influence your pelvis and the shape of your torso, that would allow me to feel that my knee and elbow could move exactly the same amount through space. So they'd start at the same time and they'd finish at the same time. And have a rest on your back. So because this is an Alexandrian eye lesson that we're doing, Feldenkrais always does one side, the other side, one side, the other side. And as I said, you'll often find as he goes further along, he does that less and less. But for the purposes of this, because it's a really interesting thing to explore, we're going to do it in this lesson. We're going to do one side, then the other side. So those movements of turning, what influence have they had on your sense of yourself at the moment? Where your breathing might be? And then roll to your right side. Oh, sorry, left side. Sorry, left side. And just feel, what shape do you make here? Is your head more or less comfortable on this side? Do you want different support on this side? Where do your legs start? And again, very gently explore the difference between rolling your head to take it to look toward the ceiling and turning your head to take it to look toward the ceiling. Really feel that difference through you, what happens differently in your shoulders, in your upper back, in your pelvis. And again, find the one that allows you to stay a little bit more clearly on your side with your head facing the ceiling. And now you'll put your right hand on your forehead. So your fingers will be pointing to your left ear, toward in the direction of your left ear. Notice, is your elbow bent or is it straight? And then begin to roll your head here. Just a few times rolling your head and noticing, what do I include in my image of this, in my self-image? How much of me do I think of? Do I think of me doing the action? Or is it still a little bit maybe just my head and my shoulders, or something else? And then begin to include this lifting of your right knee. And as you continue to explore, you're finding a way where your elbow and knee could find a timing or a way to begin to move at exactly the same time. And again, you could explore, has this got something to do with where the position I have my legs in? What shape I'm in? Because of course your shape's going to influence what your spine does as well. And one of the things, hopefully, you've already discovered about turning around yourself is you need to be long. You need to be long in the front and long in the back. That's what really facilitates turning. So you can really explore what happens if I make myself shorter in the front, if I really bring my knees up a long way, so that I'm definitely shorter in my front. How does that influence the shape my torso makes? What space I have to turn. And then you could go the other way. I can't really see any of you doing this, but there are definitely people who do this, who when they lie, they'd have their feet even behind their buttocks, so they have their knees pretty straight so that they're sort of longer in the front and shorter a little bit in their back. And how does that influence their turning? And then find a place for your legs where there's something about that I feel long in the front and long in the back. And how that influences my ability to turn, to twist, and for my knee to be able to lift easily with this movement. of my elbow going back. So we've so this first approximation, we've really started with everything going together in the same direction. Have a lie on your back, see how that feels now. So do you feel any sense of those movements, of those sort of little bit twisted with your head and then rolling a little bit? What has that done to your sense of length? The length of your front and the back? Your breathing? And come on to your left side again. No, the right side, sorry. Right side again. So could you find a position again for your legs where you could easily stand your left foot on your right ankle? So it'll be a standing leg, a standing lower leg. So your left foot will be resting on your right ankle. And again, you might want to just move your legs a little bit to feel where do you want it to be, where you feel, oh, I could move a little bit there. I'm not rolling, it's not making, so I'm not having to roll over onto my side so much to get there. And I feel it really is a standing lower leg. Turn your head a little bit to the ceiling again. Put your left hand on your forehead, as we were before. And now, this time, this is small movement. Feel the shape you're making through the middle. And very, very gently, could you begin to take your elbow to the left as you take your knee to the right? And then your elbow to the right as your knee goes to the left. So be really aware of where your starting position is, where you start, where your elbow is in relationship to your knee. And then you begin very small, elbow one direction, knee the opposite. And what is it that you can begin to sense that they both move at the same speed and the same amount? What do you have to begin to discover in the middle of your torso? So that we're really beginning to twist a little bit here now, that you're really beginning to move one part of you the upper part of you in one direction and the lower part of you in the opposite direction. So where is it in your middle that you can change that direction? Is your head still free? Breathing easy? Really finding the quality here. So we're really looking for the movement of your torso. So your breathing needs to be easy to allow your ribs to be soft, to allow your spine to be able to move. Because as soon as you put effort in, that's going to stop these possibilities of movement through the middle of you. So you're really beginning to get a sense of it's something happening in the middle of you that's actually taking your knee in one direction and your elbow in the other. And rest again on your back. Feel what that's done. It's sort of like successive approximations. And then on your left side, and doing the same thing with your right elbow and knee. Again, take a moment before you go into the movement just to really feel your setup position, where you can be, where you can really get a standing lower leg. And again, has that got something to do with the height of your knees? So is there something about, we've done many, many lessons on when is it easiest for the knees to open? Is it easier to open when your belly gets longer or when your belly gets shorter? And again, you're turning your head to the ceiling to start. So you really start with your head to the ceiling, facing the ceiling. So you're already in a little bit of a twisted position. You notice where your elbow and knee are to start. And then you begin this very, very gentle opposite movement. Something really beautiful about this lesson, that just simply getting your knees into this position is really asking people, not that they need to do it, but it's giving them the invitation that their belly can widen a little bit, especially low down. So really asking some of these big muscles of our torso to be able to change their shape a little bit, maybe out of their habits. And that you can really begin to see your left knee stays resting on the floor. You really don't need to. It's obviously in your image because something's happening in your left hip, but you don't need to engage your left leg a lot. And this small movement, just a small, small movement, so that you can really begin to sense, and we're really choosing a small movement here so that it really gives you the opportunity to sense what's happening in my middle. How can I begin to sense this sort of counter rotation, this twist through my middle? And really tracking your knee and your elbow, that they're on parallel lines to each other. And rest again. Pause. Return to your right side. Left hand on your forehead. Left foot on your right ankle. And find a place this time where both your elbow and your knee, as much as possible, are facing the ceiling, are pointing to the ceiling, so that they could be on a line, if you like, now parallel to the ceiling. So that's going to be your starting point this time. So both your elbow and your knee are starting to the ceiling, so you can have your head wherever you like to find that, because it's going to depend on whether you're having your wrist bent or your wrist straight, and your fingers are across your forehead. And in that position, just think of the length from the top of your head to the bottom of your pelvis, through the middle of you. And then think of the line from the top of your head going down the front of you to your pubic bone. And then a line going from the back, the top of your head, down the back of you to your tailbone. Just get a sense of those lines. Do some feel longer or shorter than others? And this time, keeping your elbow and your knee in this orientation to the ceiling. Just a small movement now. Take your elbow a little bit behind you and your knee a little bit forward. And then you come back to this line where they're both parallel to each other. So there you've got two lots of parallel lines. One's your elbow and knee across you, and your other parallel line is between your elbow and knee and the ceiling. And you're doing this opposite movement now here. And you're just really feeling, is it easier to go a little bit in one direction than the other? And has that got something to do with the length of you in the front and the back and the middle? So really try and get your palm across your forehead so your fingers aren't pointing to the ceiling, aren't pointing to the back of your head. They're really holding across your forehead because it's going to ask something different in your upper back, in your shoulder blade, in the base of your neck. You might even notice if you can keep this very small so that they're both to the ceiling, both going a little bit, that even your eyes would be sort of following the horizon a little bit. They'd be making a line. And then you might explore what happens if my eyes don't follow the horizon? What happens if, as my elbow goes back, they look up? Or as I come forward, they look down? Which allows you this movement to become easier. And that's where you really have to stay in quality to really sense these small differences. A little bit left, a little bit right, and really feeling through the middle of you. Are you getting clearer about where your torso does the twist? What your ribs do, what your sternum does? So be really clear that it's not so some of you are using your shoulder blade a lot here to do a lot of the movement. Can you really feel it's more coming through the middle of you? It's really asking for something much more central. That your shoulder blade can still move, but you're not doing the elbow simply by moving just your shoulder blade. But it's through the middle of you, this long vertical axis. And the more you can be, you're not completely on your side. You're obviously rolled back off it a little bit to do it, but don't roll all the way back. So if we started here and here, yeah, and there's your upper torso having to do something now, yeah, that it doesn't have to do when you're back there because it's resting on the floor, yeah. Okay. If we do it from here, push it up. Now you have to find something in your upper torso. You feel the difference? Yeah? So you're really getting a counter rotation between your first rib and the bottom of your pelvis. Pause again. So you're really finding a way that your upper torso and your lower torso are just, both are in there, both are in your image. And over on your other side, on your left, and do the same thing. So again, you're finding a position to start with where your foot's resting on your other ankle, standing leg as much as you can, and just starting where both your elbow and your knee are facing the ceiling. And then you're starting again this little twisting, opposing movement. And in your exploration, just really feeling, which do I do? Does my elbow move more through space? Does my knee move more through space? And really finding a place where you know they're both moving the same amount, so that you know that both your upper and lower torso are involved equally. So that you can really feel all these muscles, all the ribs needing to be soft, your breathing to be soft. So that it becomes one movement. So you're not sort of having to think, oh, my elbow's doing this, my knee's doing this, my head's doing this. But that you can begin to get that sense that this is simply one movement. It's not two different movements. And I can make sense, literally, of that in myself. So that it's all of you doing one movement. There's sort of a clear orientation, a clear intention. And rest on your back again. And what influence has that had? Is there anything that seems to have come more into your image? Any part of you? Onto your right side again. And this time, extend your left arm back behind you. And just feel, how do you do that? What happens in your ribs? Just do that a few times. Bring it back up to the ceiling. and extend it back behind you. What happens especially through your upper ribs? Do you feel everything rolls back, or maybe there's a little bit of a counter rotation around your middle? And then leave that arm back. And could you take your left leg out straight in front of you to the, to your right? So you've got your arm long behind you. You've got your leg long in front of you. Can you get it behind you? Yeah. Where do you want your head to be to have that? Where would it make sense? Does it try and see what happens? Some people have still got their head facing to the right. What happens if you have your head to the right to do that? Or your head in the middle, or your head to the left? Does that influence your ability to get this rotation, this counter rotation through the middle of you? And from that position, could you lift your left arm and your left leg up toward the ceiling? So again, they're going to make a line, parallel line. They're both in line with the ceiling. So there's a line connecting your left foot and your left hand, if you like. And your foot and your hand are both pointing to the ceiling. Feel where your head is, and feel you'll be rolled a little bit back behind you, but you still your right leg is still on the floor. And now with these long levers of your arm and leg, could you begin that same movement, small, 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 of taking your arm a little bit back to the left as your leg goes a little bit to the right? So they're up to the ceiling. Silvana? Yeah? So it's a small movement, really small, really small. So your arm and leg are both pointing to the ceiling. So it's the same movement we were doing before. We've just now got a long lever instead of a short lever. And you're doing this very small oscillation around the middle. And the smaller you can make it, the better. And within that smallness, to still feel it's the middle of me. It's this long line in the middle of my torso that's rotating a little bit forward and a little bit back. So it's not a big movement of your arm and leg. It's very, very small. Very, very small. So as your hand goes to the left, your foot goes to the right. As your hand goes to the right, your foot goes to the left. So that you can feel the weight of your arm and leg become light once they're supported by your torso. So the more you can find that it's the middle of you that can do this movement, the lighter your arm and leg can become. And again, you're simply noticing which direction's easier for me to rotate in. Doing a very small movement. Could I find that it could be just as easy in both directions if I stick to a really small range? So that even in this position, I can find this opposing movement. Your belly has to be mobile. Your ribs have to be mobile. Your spine has to be mobile. And especially for many of you, your upper back has to be mobile. And rest again. so that I can really begin to sense, or you can, that my limbs can be long. What is it about this turning movement that allows us to get more length? Again, this ability to have length on the front, the back, the sides. Okay, over on your other side. So again, you take your right arm back this time, behind you, and again, feel how you do that. What happens in your upper ribs, in your head? Is it a roll or is it a turn happening in those upper ribs? Do you know the difference? And then your leg out in front of you, long in front of you with your arm behind you. And then you find a way to bring them both up to the ceiling and feel where the power comes from to bring them both to the ceiling. Can you keep that length? Because usually what you'll see is if the torso isn't doing the movement, we'll try and shorten in our arm or leg. And then do that again, little oscillation around this middle. Again, where do you want your left leg to be? That helps to counterbalance you a little bit as you do this. And just the smaller you can make this movement, the better. So that you can really begin to feel the movements coming from your center. Coming from your center. And again, you know that it'll come from your center once you get this length. But the length doesn't come until you get softer. You can give up some of your habitual work. And rest again. To this twisting movement. As you're lying there, can you think of an action that this would be helpful for? Mm. Mm. come onto your left side. Let's do the other side first. Find a way to lift your right arm and your right leg easily to the ceiling. So we're back in that same position we were just in. And notice the shape your back makes. How much you've had to roll, or can you still stay a little bit more on your side to get your arm and leg there? And now from this position, take your leg forward and your arm back. So we've done this movement. We're just starting now from the middle. So you're going to take it all the way down. Slowly build it and then you come back to the middle. So it's just your leg going forward and your arm going back. And then you're bringing them back up toward the ceiling. Your leg forward and your arm back. They're both reaching for the floor. And then you bring them back up to the middle. Really getting a sense of what's happening between your pelvis and your ribs, where your sternum's going. Feeling this twisting through you. Then next time they're both toward the floor, leave them there. So obviously your leg will be in front and your arm behind. They're not touching the floor. They're just above the floor. And in this position, very gently don't lift. Reach your right leg further forward and your right arm further back. And see, does that give you even a little bit more of a twist through your torso? So they're both staying on a line parallel to the floor, and you're just reaching your right arm forward as your left arm reaches back. So you're sort of staying in that lengthened position. Now from that position, could you move both your arm and your leg down along the floor in the direction of your foot? So they're both going to swing down along the floor in the direction of your foot. So, and then they both go up again to that same position. And feel, what does that do to your torso? So you're in this long position with your right leg forward and your left arm back. That's your starting position. And then they're staying at the same level from the ground, your foot and your arm, and you're taking them, swinging them both down in the direction of your foot, staying on your side, What does your torso have to do now? To get this swinging of your arm and leg. What are your upper ribs doing? What's your belly doing? Your lower ribs? And pause on your back. Roll to your right. And now you're going to take your left arm and left leg up toward the ceiling. Just feel how you do that now. Do you have to roll as much to your back now as you were at the beginning? And now again, you're taking your left arm back behind you at the same time as you're taking your left leg forward. So again, you're making it one movement. Feel what's happening in your upper back. Where does your left shoulder need to go to make this easy? And where do your upper ribs go to make this easy? And then again, when you've found a comfortable height for them to rest away from the floor, begin that swinging movement again of swinging them both down and back. And again, what does this ask in your torso? So that again, you can feel it's a movement of your torso that's really helping you to do this. Obviously, there's still something happening in your shoulder and your hip, but they become light and easy because of this movement in your middle. This sliding up and down along the floor, above the floor. What is it that this twist through our torso gives us? If you did it faster, what would happen? This swinging of your arm and leg up and down along the floor. How quickly could you do this? And feel what has to happen through your middle. What could the middle do to this sort of counter rotation? And rest on your back again. Maybe get a sense of the weightedness of your arms and legs at the moment. Is there something about the relationship between, as many of us find more length, that things might get a little bit lighter? Come back to the original position on your right, where you were on your side. And just see, is it a little easier to find your side at the moment after doing that? And where would you rest your legs now? Has it changed at all from the beginning of being on your side? Feeling the length of your front, the length of your back. Place your left hand on your forehead. And now just roll your head and your arm and just see, how's that feel now? Is there something happening in your upper torso a little bit differently after all that twisting? So are you beginning to get a sense now that as you roll your head back and your left ribs rotate back, your right ribs rotate forward? If that makes sense. That there's a twisting happening in your upper torso rather than just a rolling. So another way we could maybe describe this is that as you roll your head back, your right arm could reach a little bit further forward. So it would get longer along the ground. So that there's more of a twist happening in your upper torso. And then feel the difference if as you roll your head back, your right arm gets pulled back with you. So that you can begin to differentiate this difference between more a roll and a twist. And what has to be maybe a little bit more active in you when you do a twist rather than a roll. And then try the same thing on the other side. And how much is in your image now? And again, maybe after a lesson like that, there'll be some parts of you that maybe more readily come to your image. But can you still feel it's you doing the movement? That it's your toes and your fingers, your hips, and your elbows and your wrists, and your spine and your ribs. Again, just feel that difference between rolling and twisting. And feel what happens differently in your pelvis and your knees if you do a roll compared to a twist. There's something different happen in your low back. In your belly. So again, I think this is a really great example of Feldenkrais always talks about, thinking abstract ideas and that we understand them once we can do them, once we can put them into action. So maybe for some of you, that's really helped clarify the difference between twisting and rolling. Some of you, maybe it's still a bit of a work in progress. What really is the difference? Okay, leave it. Come up to standing. So what's your sense of yourself after a lesson like that? What comes more to your attention? Where's your breathing? And if you now began to take a step, could you think it's something through the middle of you that could begin the movement? And then just take it into a walk and just feel what influence of those movements had on your walking. Maybe where a sense of if you were going to go quicker, what do you do to go quicker? Is it something you have to do with your arms and legs to go quicker? If you wanted more power, is it something you do with your arms and legs that would give you more power? So what's different in your self-image at the moment? What could you take with you from this lesson that would be different in your self-image? Okay, we'll have a break.